listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaiah Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaiah Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again today. Just like any other day, we have another special guest joining us today. Today, we have Koukl. He's the author of a new book, Street Smarts, Using Questions to Answer Christianity's Toughest Challenges. We're going to learn everything about him because he's also the one who has founded and is still president of Stand to Reason. You go visit that website, it's str.org. But first and foremost, let's get to Gray today and say, how you doing today?
Hey, Shemaiah, I'm doing fine, and thanks for the conversation today. And by the way, when you found an organization, you can make yourself president. So I'm founder and president for that.
I love that.
It's convenient.
I want to say thanks for your time. I know you're slammed with a lot of things on your schedule and calendar. So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write this book.
Well, it's kind of a long story, Shemaiah. I mean, I was a child of the 60s. I was born in 1950, actually, in high school and college in the 60s, the whole counterculture movement, which I embraced wholeheartedly for a while. And then in the early 70s, people will say, oh, well, I found God or I found Jesus. Well, Jesus found me, to be quite honest about it. And I became a follower of Jesus in 1973, almost 50 years ago now in September. And I began to look at life an entirely different way. The way Jesus looked at it, that was my goal because he was the guy. He got it right. He saw the world the way it really was. This is what I was convinced of. But being convinced myself of it and convincing other people that this was actually true. And by the way, when I say true, I don't mean true for me, like this is my club. That's not what I mean. I mean true to the way the world actually is. I mean true the way gravity is true. You know, it's Jesus is the person who he actually claimed to be, the Son of God come down. And so anyway, making that case with others was a challenge. And so there were a lot of questions I had myself about how Christianity, taken understood properly and taken at large, fit into the world. I actually, before I became a follower of Jesus, I thought I was too smart to be a Christian, frankly. And then I found out that the smart money is really on him. And this is what I wanted to communicate with others. So a huge part of my life since then, especially the last 30 years with Stand to Reason, the organization I started 30 years ago with a number of people, and really it's been going great what God has been doing. The goal, it was to help train Christians to think more carefully about their own convictions, and then to be able to engage in a thoughtful and a gracious but effective way with people who happen to disagree. And over the years, I've developed some techniques or tools that would really help accomplish that effectively. I'm not looking to get into fights with people. I don't think our conversations with other people on contrary issues should be gladiator events. I'm not looking to draw blood. And that's the case, unfortunately, with a lot of folks in conversation about critical issues right now in our culture. But I do want to make a difference. I do want to persuade people about things they believe, because I think Jesus got it right, like I said, and this makes a massive difference, not just for this life, but forever. And so Street Smarts is a second book and like a sequel. The first one is simply called Tactics, and the subtitle is A Game Plan for Discussing Your Christian Convictions. And here in that book, I trade on some basic ideas that will help Christians maneuver well in conversations and effectively too. And I give lots of illustrations in the book, and there's lots of different maneuvers that I offer. But the specific game plan is a game plan that is built on asking questions for a very good reason. Questions keep you safe. You're in a volatile environment, a challenging culture. People don't agree with the views that Christians have, either theologically or ethically, and I understand that. But sometimes to get into conversations with them, it seems like fighting words, you know. And my goal is to help this whole project, Shemaiah, look more like diplomacy than D-Day, okay? And so I started with the Tactics book, with the game plan there. And then Street Smarts is a sequel to it. And this is why the subtitle rather, is Using Questions to Answer Christianity's Toughest Challenges. So I have categories in there. I have categories like atheism, for example, or the problem of evil, or problems people have with the Bible, or with the person of Jesus, or the abortion question, or science and the Bible, or marriage, or gender, or sex, all of those kinds of controversial issues. I teach followers of Christ how to navigate by giving them insight into the problems or flaws with those views, and then giving them questions and model dialogues on how they could navigate in conversations safely. So there's a thumbnail sketch of from beginning to now. It's like a half a century, but me starting out thinking I was too smart to be a Christian, then realizing this really smart money is on Jesus of Nazareth and the worldview he reflected, and then helping Christians to show that's the case with detractors, skeptics, and challengers, but in a gracious way.
Listen, I'm Refocus Radio talking to our guest today, Greg Koukl, and his book, Street Smarts, Using Questions to Answer Christianity's Toughest Challenges. When it comes to the book, you also discuss mistakes that Christians make when it comes to defending and discussing their views. What seems to be the most common mistake that Christians come across? Yeah,
there's actually more than one answer to that. I mean, one of them is that what I suggested here is that they don't ask questions. They make statements. Okay, that's one of the big mistakes. They get into and this happens in lots of times in dialogue with other people. They have their view, we have our view. They state their side, we state our side, and sometimes it works out well, and sometimes it doesn't, because everybody's making statements against the other person's view and disagreeing with the other person, and it can get kind of heated. Okay, what I suggest is have the same kind of conversation, in other words, on a critical issue, but using questions to maneuver. And see, when you use a question, Shemaiah, you, just like you're doing with me, you are relaxed asking the question, and I'm doing most of the talking, right? I'm doing the heavy lifting. So this puts the Christian who's asking the question in a more relaxed position, and they're listening for information. So they're getting the other side's view more clearly. They're also, by asking questions, it results in the other person getting his own view more clearly as well. And that's good for the conversation. And by the way, note, that's a conversation, back and forth, easy goes, and questions help to do that. And they keep the Christians safe. So that's one mistake. Another mistake they made, and I kind of implicitly spoke to that a few moments ago, is when Christians talk about their views, okay, they use the word belief and faith. Well, my faith is this, or my belief is that. Well, I understand what they mean. And we all have beliefs about all kinds of things. The difficulty in public conversation is when the Christian talks about his faith, people add extra words to it, like leap of, or blind, or something like that. And I want people to understand that I am not describing my little parochial belief system, join my club, see if you like it. I'm trying to describe the way the world actually is. And I don't want them to relativize my view by when I use terms like faith or belief. Okay. And this is why I mentioned the word convictions a couple of moments ago. These are my convictions. And that has a different ring to it, doesn't it? When we talk about our convictions, that sounds like things we're convinced of. That doesn't sound like the things that we took a leap of faith to believe. So the way we use our language is important, and asking questions is important. Notice I mentioned just a few moments ago when you asked me how I kind of got to this spot, I mentioned I wanted people to see that what Jesus said was actually true, but I don't mean true for me. I mean, true the way gravity is true, okay? So that was the kind of distinction I make in my conversations, so people don't subtly relativize my own view. And so that's another mistake Christians make. You can avoid it very simply by not using the word faith. Talk more about your convictions, or instead of saying my beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with the word beliefs, it's just the way people hear it nowadays, you can talk about my views. And I think then it's more clear that you are trying to make a case for the way the world really is, and not just sharing your own private leap of faith religious view, so to speak. So those are two mistakes that Christians make a lot in the way they speak, and then not asking questions. I'm just saying, Shemaiah, they are just like they're almost magical in their ability to soften a conversation and get information that you need, and to get people thinking about their own view. And in street smarts especially, what I'm doing there is helping Christians know what questions to ask and why to ask them regarding particular issues, to either parry a challenge to Christianity, or to help expose a flaw in another person's view, say a pro-choicer's view, or some atheistic skeptic's view, or something like that. So these are powerful tools to go right to the heart of the matter with people who just flat out don't agree with you. And many Christians don't know how to deal with that. This is a technique, a tool, a game plan that will allow them to do that.
And speaking of a game plan, there are also the other side. So the non-believer, what is some of the popular questions that can be asked on their side, and how can Christians be prepared to answer those questions?
Sure. Okay. Well, part of it has to do with the game plan proper, and let me just get that really briefly. If a person is offering a challenge to me, I'm going to kick into my, game plan mode. And the first thing that I'm going to do is ask a question for clarification of their own view. Okay. And some form of the question, what do you mean by that? So the first step is to gather information. Somebody says, well, what about the problem of evil? Okay, that's a standard challenge to Christian theism, or any form of theism, frankly. What about the problem of evil? And I say, what about it? And they say, well, that's a problem for you, isn't it? I say, what's the problem? Now, I'm familiar with the problem of evil, and I have a master's degree in philosophy, so I got all this stuff back there, and I try to convey some of it, of course, in the book. But what I want that other person to do is I want to get off the defensive immediately, if I can, and into conversational mode. And I want the other person to spell out exactly what the problem is, okay? So there's just one example where here comes the challenge. What about the problem of evil? What about it? Well, it's a problem, isn't it? Well, how is that a problem? Well, so if your God is really powerful and really good, then he would be able to get rid of evil and want to, but there's still evil around, so your God doesn't exist. Now, that would be a way of them characterizing it. But notice I'm just asking questions to get the ball rolling, all right? And also to force the other person to think more carefully about their challenge, all right? So now we're in conversation mode. So then my next question is, well, then you actually do believe in evil, right? Of course I do. Why would I raise the objection if I didn't believe in evil? Okay, well, good. I believe in evil too. So, but I have so you have some standard then. Why would you call something evil? Why would you call something evil? Now, this is a question I ask because I'm trying to get at the idea of a standard, okay? And people might give examples of evil: rape, torture, waterboarding, I don't know, murder, genocide, all these kinds of things. Okay, so the question, though, is that I ask, what is it that makes those things evil? That's a real important question, and it's a question most people haven't thought about. They know that they're evil, but they haven't asked what makes them evil, okay? And really what's going on here is that there's we have an understanding that there are rules that are broken, okay? It's like speed limits in the universe, right? And people break the speed limits, so to speak. I'm just using that as an analogy. But I want them to make sense of that. I want them to help me to understand it. There are rules that are broken. People shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Okay, fine. I get that. Now I have another question. Where did those rules come from? Where did those rules come from? Now, notice in this circumstance, I've just given some questions, and some of your listeners are just following where I'm going here. I'm trying to make sense of how an atheist can complain about real evil in the world, because there is evil in the world. Everybody knows that. Okay, it doesn't matter where you lived or when you live. Everybody knows that something's wrong with the world. Okay, but how can we make sense of something wrong with the world? Okay, and by the way, this isn't just a theist's problem. The problem of evil is a human problem. And so if I were to agree with the atheist, and this is a dialogue that's in the book, for example, one that someone could pursue in conversation. If I were to agree with the atheist that there is no God, okay, you're right, there is no God because of evil in the world. But my question then is, but these things that you identify as evil, they still happen, don't they? Genocide and murder and rape and all that. Oh, yeah, they still happen. Are they still evil? Oh, yeah, they're still evil. Okay, here you are in a universe without God, and you see all this evil, and you're an atheist. Now it's your turn. Please explain to me the problem of your solution to the problem of evil. Where did all this evil come from? See, the difficulty is if you get rid of God, like the atheist does, you've gotten rid of a standard of morality that we judge good and evil by, the set of rules that are broken that we call evil in the world. And sometimes I'll just ask the question of the atheist, okay, I get it. They broke the rules. Okay, who made the rules? The problem is you're not going to be able to make sense of the problem of evil without a transcendent set of rules, which you're not going to be able to make sense of without the existence of God. So it turns out that the problem of evil is a good argument for God, not against it, and a good argument against atheism. Now, this is classically called the moral argument for God's existence, but I just use it as an example. And obviously, I went quickly through that. Maybe your listeners didn't quite follow it. What I do in the book, and I have a chapter called Evil, Atheism's Greatest Flaw. Fatal flaw is what it's called. I walk through the steps so the readers understand the point in a more thorough way. And then I give these questions, some of which I offered here, and the dialogues that might follow, so they know how to employ the insight they gain from the book on the nature of the problem of evil and how it is evidence for God and against atheism, and then use those questions in a conversation with another person. So there's one example. There's lots of them, though. I mean, take abortion, for example, very controversial issue. And one of the things that I think is most important for all pro-lifers to understand, everybody to understand in this issue, is that there's only one question that needs to be answered to be able to determine whether abortion is morally acceptable or not. Okay. And the way I make this point is as I ask some questions of the person who maybe is pro-abortion. And here's what I say. And this dialogue, of course, is in the book. I say, if you're working at your desk or something and your daughter or your son comes up behind you and they say to you, Mommy, Daddy, can I kill this? Now your back is turned to them. You can't see them. What is the one question you must have answered before you can answer that particular question? What can I kill this? Well, of course you have to ask, what is it, right? If it's a spider, smash it, or a cockroach. If it's your little brother, wait a minute, we have to have a conversation. Now, what this does, and this is what I explained to the person that I asked the question of, is it helps us to zero in on the most important issue. Before it's right or wrong to kill any living thing, you first have to know what that thing is. Abortion kills something. That's the whole point of abortion. What is it that abortion kills? That's the question. Now, people might say, well, it's a blob of tissue. Well, we're all blobs of tissue after a fashion. What kind of tissue? Okay, well, it's the mother's body. Really? Okay, did you ever watch CSI? Yeah, sure. So when you watch CSI and they find some hair at a crime scene, how do they know which individual that hair belongs to? Oh, well, they do a DNA test. Right. Okay. So when they do a DNA test, what are they looking to do? They're matching the hair to some other person to make sure that that hair belonged to that person. Okay, good. Gotcha. Now, that blob of tissue that's growing inside mom, if they did a DNA test on that blob of tissue, would that tissue have the same DNA as mom? Well, the answer is no. Pretty much everybody knows that. It only has half of mom's DNA and half of dad's DNA. So, in other words, what you're saying is that whatever that thing is that's growing inside of mom is not mom. It's something else. It's got a different DNA, fingerprint. Okay, got it. Okay, what kind of thing is that that's growing in there? Oh, I don't know. Well, let's go back to the DNA. If CSI wanted to find out what kind of organism this tissue belonged to, how would they do that? They'd do another DNA test. Right. Okay. And what would they discover? What kind of organism was growing inside of mom? Well, they find out when they do a DNA test that's a human. That's human DNA in there. Absolutely. So it is a human growing inside mom that isn't mom. Oh, we've made a lot of progress, haven't we? You know, and so this is just a series of questions that I offer on the abortion issue to help people think more carefully. Well, wait a minute. We have to know what it is before we can know whether it's okay to kill it. And we can figure out what it is by just asking some simple questions. And then they end up coming to the right conclusion because they're obvious answers. All right. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't a lot more things to deal with in the abortion question. I have 2 chapters dealing with abortion, kind of basics and then more advanced challenges. But the point is, and I was just giving an illustration about how one can use questions, even with this really difficult or challenging, volatile question of abortion, if they know what the questions are and the reason you're asking the questions. So I give the background information to give the background information, the argument, as it were. Here's the real issue, and then the questions that lead in it. So there's a couple of examples of how I work through that in the book Street Smarts.
Once again, listen, on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Greg Koukl, in his book Street Smarts. And when you really just tie all up together, the whole focus of the book is to help Christians engage in productive conversations where we live in today's world where it's a lot of challenges and a lot of different perspectives and opinions. Was another tool that you tried to help Christians to understand that we don't need to be using manipulation or anything that is outside of the basics of the fundamental parts of the Bible?
Yeah, what you said about me wanting Christians to engage, I was thinking a couple of qualifications, and they fit in right here. Yes, I want them to engage, but I want them to engage thoughtfully. I want them to engage graciously. I want them to engage effectively, okay? And that's a hallmark of the approach that Stand to Reason, the organization that I represent. And you can find information at str.org, for example, is we want to build ambassadors for Christ. We don't want to build gladiators, people who are looking to draw blood and have a gotcha moment and make people look stupid and be the winners over an argument. No, we want to be representatives of Christ that represent him graciously and effectively and actually become agents of change in other people's lives. Fighting with people is not going to do that. It gets people on the defensive. So I have a basic rule, Shemaiah, and that is in a conversation, if I get mad, I lose. Okay? I lose in what I'm trying to accomplish, which is to change other people's views. If I don't get mad, but the way I'm acting towards them makes them mad, I still lose. In other words, if anybody gets mad, I'm going to lose. So what I want to do, and I'm glad you brought this point up, what I want to do is not just engage incisively and teach people to do that. Christian, like here's a false view that's dangerous, that's not good spiritually or for community or culture or whatever, and here's what's wrong with it. Well, we can figure that stuff out. That stuff's in the book. But that's just the knowledge side of the equation. We want to have the wisdom to engage in a diplomatic fashion. And that's a huge part of what the book is about. How do we maneuver in a gracious but incisive way on very, very difficult topics? When you get street smart, then you'll be able to do that effectively and graciously.
And once again, you can go visit Greg's website is str.org. You can learn everything that he does with Stand to Reason, Clear Thinking Christianity. First and foremost, how can people continue to support what you do? And definitely they can get your book on Amazon.
Yeah, that's great. They can go to Amazon if they want. They can also go to streetsmartsthebook.com to pre-order or after it's released on September 12th to order it. streetsmartsthebook.com. And if they pre-order there, they're going to get a bunch of extra stuff. Just go to Amazon, you get the book. Okay. If you go to streetsmartsthebook.com, no spaces, you're going to get some extra stuff. So I recommend that for the book. And also, thank you for mentioning the website, str.org, Stand to Reason, STR. And we have just thousands and thousands of pages, hundreds and hundreds of videos, all kinds of things. My own podcast they can listen to. We do basically 3 hours a week, 4 different shows. They can download those and subscribe to that. These are all ways to help Christians think more carefully about their convictions and to make a difference for the cause of Christ in their culture.
Once again, you listen on Refocus Radio talking to our guest today, Greg Koukl, and you can go get his book. You can pre-order it. We're going to have this out. It's going to be broadcasted September 10th, so it's going to be a couple days before it's released. But you can pre-order right now while you're hearing this message right now on the radio station. But go to Amazon, go to his main website, str.org. And what's the book website real quick for the listeners?
The book website is simply streetsmartsthebook.com.
Once again, I want to say thank you again, Greg, for taking time out of your busy schedule talking to us today.
No, it's great chatting with you, Shemaiah. Thank you.